start over here with Don Sellers, who is the videographer, the editor, the person who has brought this, created the images that you see. For a quarter century, he's been making documentaries for Frontline. He's gone to China, he's gone to Africa. Remarkable filmmaker, Don Sellers. Lucy Anstrander has been looking at Americans in China for quite some time. For her master's thesis, she created a film on Anna Louise Strong, another American who participated in the Chinese Revolution. She's since participated in creating other films focusing on stories in Washington. She's one of the producers for this film. The person whose voice you, as soon as he picks up the microphone, you will recognize, because along with Sidney's, you hear it in the documentary, is Irv Drosnin, who 40 years ago tried to dispel certain myths about China in a remarkable film that he made for CBS called Misunderstanding China. Misunderstanding China. He subsequently went to China in 1974, produced a documentary there on Shanghai, produced other documentaries, of course, for CBS, won a number of awards before moving over to PBS, where he subsequently made additional films about China. Our producer, our interviewer, Irv Drosnin. And as I said, without Yulin, we don't have Sidney. And as Sidney said in another setting with Dick Drobnik, Dick asked, what's a good day? And his response was, every day that I get to spend with Yulin. There's, of course, absolutely nothing that should be said introducing Sidney Rittenberg. You've just had 90 minutes of Sid introducing his own story. Sid is just about a month younger than the Chinese Communist Party. Just a month younger than the Chinese Communist Party, and he has given us this remarkable, remarkable story. And now we have time for your questions, but they need to be questions. That's the first rule. They need to be questions, and we'd like to focus these questions on the film and on Sid's experience in China. But if I could ask you one just to start. Edgar Snow interviewed Mao, and Mao was mystified how workers in the United States had not elected a Labor Party. During the Cultural Revolution, you meet with these Red Guards, and these Red Guards are fascinated with the United States. And you were focused from beginning to end, and of course the end is a long way away, on being that bridge. What is it about the United States that is most puzzling? Was most puzzling to Mao, most puzzling to the Red Guards, most puzzling to others?
Well, I think that I always feel like Lady Gaga with this thing. I don't really look much like her. But, Mao was definitely intrigued by the United States more than any other foreign country. No other country was even close. And that impression is validated by his doctor in the book on the personal life of Chairman Mao. So this is one of the big open secrets that most people don't know. And I think one thing that puzzled him was, why is it that we had such a great democracy with so much freedom, but we didn't seem to want to allow that freedom to people in, what was that called, third world countries? And he said, in one of his reflective speeches in 1949, he said, we tried to learn democracy from the Western countries, mainly America, but we couldn't understand why the master was always beating the student, not really allowing the student to learn. So being frustrated in that area, he turned to Lenin, who seemed to have the answer.
Thank you. We have time now, again, for your questions. Please raise your hand, wait to be called upon, and then get to your question. Let's go over here, Charlie Xie.
During your years there, was Deng Xiaoping around? And what was that guy look like?
Did you ever encounter Deng Xiaoping? What were your impressions of Deng Xiaoping before his supreme position?
Yeah, well, I didn't know him well. I had several brief sessions with him, but my impression was of a very businesslike man. Very no-nonsense, businesslike, rather sharp, but my contact before he became the top leader was sort of rewarding, because once in the early 60s, when he was general secretary of the party, so he was like the housekeeper for the party, he circulated a memo praising my work. So that made me feel kindly towards him. But then after I got out of prison the second time, in 1977, I sent him an open letter by his daughter, sent him a letter by his daughter, not an open letter, saying that if China didn't learn to open Chinese society to the foreign experts that were coming to transmit technology and so on, that they would fail to get technology. You can't expect these people to come and be shut out and not allowed to make friends and do well. And also criticize the fact that the leaders of the New China News Agency, where I was working, didn't allow the foreign experts working there to know anything about what went on in their own organization where they were working. And the excuse was that they had to protect state secrets. But I said in my letter, there actually aren't any state secrets there. They're neither military nor diplomatic. What they protect is their own bureaucracy and bad management. They don't want the foreign experts knowing. So anyway, that sort of put me on the wrong side. I never got a direct answer, but next time I saw her daughter, his daughter who was a good friend, she said, we locked you up all those years and you still don't know how to behave.
Still don't know how to behave. Let's ask somebody who's tried to make you behave. So let's ask you, Lynn. The Cultural Revolution begins, and your husband doesn't take the advice to stand down. He steps up. What was your advice? We've heard that you folks disagree on some things. Did you disagree with him then?
Well, I disagree. Well, the question at that time, I don't have enough time because after he left the home, 1.5 hours, and the policeman came to my house. And they said, you have to move. So we, 4 kids with myself, or 5 people, we are locked in a special room for 8 months. So we are not allowed to go outside to get sunshine for the kids. And they have a special person give us 3 meals a day. After 8 months, of course, during the 8 months, a lot of problem for the kids' health. So after the 8 months, and I got a notice. He said, outside is okay, you can get out. So gave us a small room, so we live there. But after that, then I go to labor camp and everything. So that's started. For Sidney, I think it's because I trusted him because asked me to expose him about the spy things because I really tell the truth. So that is the only thing I can do, and nothing I can help. So.
But I'd just like to say that this is a genuine hero. This is a genuine hero. Don't get me started. Somebody who is a wonderful, kind, sweet, gentle wife, mother, grandmother, friend, but you try to get her to budge on anything that she thinks is right in principle, waste of time. Not going to happen no matter what you do to her.
Qing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, do you have plans to show this film in China? Will you translate this for a Chinese audience? Because you mentioned the new generation does not know about your story and your experience. What are your thoughts about history repeating itself in China if the young people don't know about the Cultural Revolution?
Maybe the first part of the question could be answered by Lucy and Irv.
I didn't hear it.
About making the film accessible in China, coming up with subtitles, making it accessible in China. Do you have any plans for that?
I'm not in charge of distribution.
Well, first of all, we have to raise more money in order to do that. And I don't know how this is going to be received in China, but we would love to have it distributed widely.
And then the second part of the question, focusing on the importance of this story being told because of the ignorance that you referred to, the lack of information about the Cultural Revolution, about the Great Leap Forward.
Well, I think it's very important to study this this period in human history, especially important for the Chinese people to study it. Very, very important, and to derive the lessons from it, but it's important for the whole world. But as to whether there will ever be a repetition of the Cultural Revolution, I think never, no way. You don't have any of the basic conditions, like a worshipped predominant leader who's almost a god, an infallible doctrine, a highly organized, established church. You don't have any of this. So whatever trouble there may be or may not be, it will not, I don't think, be anything like the Cultural Revolution. And anybody who attempts to move in that direction is going to find his way blocked, I think, pretty quickly, the way Xilai found his way blocked in Chongqing.
Irv, you together with Lucy and Don, you folks spent more than 24 hours. You spent much more of the time than that, but you had more than 20 hours of Sid on tape. What was the hardest thing to leave out of the 90 minutes that you included?
Well, I think it was William James who said that wisdom is knowing what to leave out. So if I tell you what we left out, you may all just sit there and say, boy, how dumb can you be? We left out a lot that we wanted to use until Don finally showed up at my door and said, I'm not leaving here until we have this down to 90 minutes. There's more than one thing, but there are a couple of things I regret. One of those things is Sidney's story before he ever set foot in China. He just didn't show up in China full-blown, committed to fighting injustice, wanting to right wrongs, wanting to be on the side of history. That started when he was a college kid in North Carolina, where it also wasn't very safe to take that position. He started out by being involved in organizing labor unions in places that did not want labor unions, by organizing for civil rights in places that the authorities, of course, felt they already had civil rights. This is the South of the 30s. So Sidney brought this with him to China, and he told these inspiring stories to us of the men and women he tutored and worked with in the Carolinas, in the American South, that he helped to organize unions, and we couldn't just not find a way to use it. So that's, I think, regrettable. It certainly speaks to the American impulse of idealism, just as Sidney's failings, if you want to call them that, in China speak to the limitations on the foreign influence or the influence Americans can exercise in countries far away with different cultures and political and social systems, as we have seen all too often in the last 20 years. It is a big and important part of Sidney. And what he saw in China when he got there is in the film. There are other things. We didn't always agree on what should be in the film and what should not be in the film. I'm a firm believer that if you gave the same material to 10 different filmmakers, you might end up with 10 different films. I'd only like 9 of them, or 1 of them, but still, it's a hard piece of business, and it's a process.
Lucy, what was hard for you to give up?
Well, I wanted to keep the story in of Sid playing Chin Rummy with Mao and Xilai.
I wanted to keep
I mean, there's so much, and I want to just put another plug in about why we need to raise more money. One of the things we want to do with this film is to produce a DVD that can have some of the bonus features, things that we were not able to put in the film, and so that's one of the reasons why we're out having screenings, getting the word out as broadly as possible, so people know that this is an important film, and we can get this out to colleges and universities and have it broadcast and have it shown in theaters. But if we're able to raise additional funds, we will put out a DVD with some of this bonus material that we had to leave out.
Stan Rose. One thing that doesn't come out in the film is your role within the American community in China, except for the woman from Goldman Sachs, that relationship. But as I remember as a graduate student doing my dissertation on the Cultural Revolution and reading your name in the Red Guard newspapers, Li Dunbai and so on, the word was that you were basically almost like Mao himself within the American community and the foreign community. Everybody hung on every word you said because you knew what was going on at the top and they didn't know. So maybe you can say something about that.
Your role within the American community in Beijing, were you Mao himself?
See, that's the problem with talking when Stan Rosen's there, because he always knows the inside story, which is true. No, it's true. There were things like this. 1958, very tense year, the beginning of the Great Leap Forward. Everything looks roses. And news from China is basically cut off from the outside world. So in comes Anna Louise Strong, a very talented journalist, and she puts out a weekly newsletter called Letters from Beijing. And the point is to get this circulated, not just in English, but in every language in the world. And I was given the job of organizing the foreign experts in every different language group to translate this newsletter and send it out every week. So, there was Arabic, there was Persian, there was Hindi, there was Swahili, there was whatever you can think of. So I was able to do things like that because I had an inside track on the information, and therefore I was a welcome figure at people's lunch tables when I went to the foreign experts' dining rooms, and that was easy. You didn't have to be a genius to be able to do things like that. So it's true, I was that kind of figure. And of course, when things turned sour, when I was arrested and held under suspicion, all of this became grounds for suspicion and so on.
Peter Shao.
Sidney, can you talk about your political ideology today?
I can talk about it, I'm not sure it'll make any sense. I still have the same basic ideals and philosophy that I started out with as a kid at Chapel Hill, really. I think nature moves forward, the world makes progress, society makes progress. We now have a new condition, and that is we will continue to make progress if we don't totally blow up the planet and destroy the whole human race, which we are now capable of doing in less than 30 minutes. And I believe that people share the same wants, needs, and desires all over the world. It's very important for us to know the differences in the way the average Chinese thinks, emotes, feels, from the way people here think, emote, feel. But the reason it's important to know that is so we can see beyond that and see that they want exactly the same things that we want. Only they may think about them in different ways. And also in the world today, nobody is going to achieve their needs and desires unless we all work together. There are so many issues today that can only be resolved globally, and especially through cooperation by powers like China and the United States, the world's biggest and second biggest economies. I mean, from climate change to international terrorism to pandemic diseases to the global financial system, etc., etc. None of these can be resolved by any one country acting alone. And I think my basic ideology, if you like, is that promoting understanding and cooperation among all the peoples of the world, especially between Chinese and Americans. Because I think the fate of our children and grandchildren is going to depend on this to a very great extent. And in fact, as Henry Kissinger says every time he gets a chance, conflict is not an option. I mean, for the wild men who are thinking about one day when they're going to launch a great war against China, forget it. It's not going to happen unless we're bitten by some kind of suicide virus that really wants self-destruction. It's not going to happen. Given that it's not going to happen, it's imperative that we learn as soon as possible to understand each other, to respect each other, and to work together. And respect is really the key here. So in terms of a political ideology, that's as far as I go at this point. I don't believe in any other kind of dogma.
Please, Chen.
Okay, Mr. Rittenberg. I'm from a Chinese city called Dalian, where Bo Xilai spent 8 years as a mayor before he was promoted to the Secretary of Commerce of China, and before all the Chongqing incidents. And I think many people here know Bo Xilai, his advocacy and his for the Mao's ideologies in Chongqing, and his experiment for the red period back in the Chongqing. So I would like to know what do you think about Bo Xilai's activities and Chongqing, and how do you think about what is right about the modern China's leadership? Thank you.
Well, I think, 3 years ago, I had lunch with an American correspondent for a major American newspaper in Beijing. And all the foreign correspondents were talking about Bo Xilai's future 3 years ago. And some of them thought he would be the next premier. All of them thought that he would be in the standing committee, in the top leadership elected at the party congress this year. And I was the only one that said, this man will be taken down out of power before he ever gets to be in the standing committee. And it was supposed to be secret. I mean, we were supposed to be talking off the record. He put it in item 1 on the front page of his newspaper, quoting me. So I said to Yulin, if Bo Xilai does fall, I'm going to be a prophet. If he doesn't fall, I'll probably go back to jail. So anyway, he fell. No, the red slogans and the red songs that this guy promoted have nothing whatsoever to do with Mao Zedong or the Cultural Revolution, any of that stuff. It's just like a coat of red paint with no solid wall behind it at all. It's just something to make him popular among people that don't think very much. Because this is not, I know the way Bo Xilai thinks from way back. This is not the way he thinks at all. He is not a worshiper of Chairman Mao. In fact, in the Cultural Revolution, why did he go to jail? Because he was one of the leaders of the rebel group called Liandong, which was the only group that was against Mao Zedong. Their group was defending the leaders who were being attacked by the Red Guards, including his father, Boi Bo, including Liu Shaoqi and so on. So the sudden use of quotations from Chairman Mao and so on, I think totally demagogic, not really the way he thinks at all, and very shallow. I mean, people enjoy getting together and singing these rousing revolutionary songs, certainly better than Hong Kong cabaret songs. So that's natural, but that didn't mean that people were thinking the way Mao Zedong would have wanted them to think. My personal opinion.
In parks and whatnot, we can hear these songs being sung. We can hear protesters in airports occasionally singing these songs. But I'd like to take you back to the Great Leap Forward. We saw you talk and heard your voice talk about the tragic loss of life. 25, 35 million people, some people even say more perished. What did you know then? What did you know then? How did you know it? And what could you do with that information?
I knew nothing about what was going on in the countryside, nothing. One of the editors in the English section wrote a feature, gave it to me, and I looked at it and I thought the lead is too dull, so I put on a new lead saying, in China today, the standard of living is not high, but nobody's starved. And the chief editor crossed that out. And I asked him why, and he said, because it's not true. And that was a shock to me. And I wondered whether he really knew what he was talking about. We did not know. All we knew was that the people that worked in most city offices and schools all suffered from malnutrition, edema, swelling. Yulin's face, arms, and legs were all swollen because of lack of protein, lack of nourishment. But people said it's a virus, it's something in the water, or whatever. Nobody that I heard said it's because of the Great Leap Forward.
You mentioned near the end of the film that had you not gotten involved in politics, maybe your contribution would have been greater than it was. How could you not be involved in politics? Your very being there was a political act. And you spent more than 30 years living, working full-time in China. Since then, you've spent 30 plus years going back and forth, really being that bridge between the United States and China. During which period did you make the greater contribution?
Well, that passage actually was written by Irv Drasman, not by me. He copied my voice very, very cleverly. But No, seriously, I think that was a little overblown. I could not have been apolitical, but I could have stayed out of the factional internal struggle. What was the other part? Oh, yeah. I think really we have done more good, probably through our consulting in the past 30 years than at any other time in my life. I really do.
Dick Drawman.
Thank you. Sidney, you, a moment ago, were talking about the importance of the U.S. and China cooperating on global issues from pandemics to global warming and so on and so forth. What would your advice be to American leaders in the government sector, in the business sector, in the academic sector, to try to move forward that cooperation, say, over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years?
Well, I think, if I had to give advice to both countries, I'd say to our own people, our own leaders, show respect. It's fine to disagree, but show respect. I mean, when the Chinese delegate at the UN and the Security Council doesn't go along with an action against Syria, the Secretary of State does not say that's disgusting. You don't talk like that to leaders of an Asian country. It doesn't make any sense if you're supposed to be a diplomat. So I think a lack of consistent respect on our side is one of the chief obstacles, really. On the Chinese side, there is a danger of being overwhelmed by the fact that you are now a great world power and the second strongest economy and quite growing capability in national strength all across the board, including military. And the worst thing that can happen is to show great nation chauvinism in your international policy. So when I see things like just yesterday, I think it was, the former Prime Minister of Norway, who was going to China to lead a seminar that was all set, he was denied a visa by the Chinese government, apparently mainly because 2 years ago the Norwegians gave the Nobel Prize to a Chinese citizen. Well now, for a country of 1.3 billion, the second strongest economy, to beat up on little Norway, I think it's shameful. And I think moving in that direction is going to cost China heavily in international understanding and cooperation, really. I talked to a friend of ours, Chinese friend, who's a leading scholar in Beijing, and I asked him, I said, what do you think is the main danger before China looking into the future? And he answered immediately, nationalism. I think that's true. So on both our sides, it's our kind of nationalism, lacking respect for other countries, and it's their kind of nascent nationalism, feeling their oats that they're now a great power, that is the main obstacle probably to faster progress.
I want to add something.
Just bring it close.
So I think that is different from the society. I'm Chinese. China has thousands history. Respect is very, very important. This is very important. Let's give you an example. It's different. What's the difference? We married 56 years. 56 years. Every time I said it's easy to make jokes. When the people walking, he hears something, he suddenly make a joke. For the Americans to laugh each other. When I just answer some question. Sometimes with the Chinese, we're in a circle, he suddenly say something, make Chinese up, like this. What? I said, don't make jokes. Chinese never make jokes when people talking jokes, then make jokes. He realized that's a joke. It's not a serious. But he still does. That means it's different. Your natural nationality is different. The customs is a difference. So like China, they are very careful with the face. That's what we usually give our clients. Don't argue on the table, make a Chinese got angry. That's a different custom. So that's a Chinese because thousand years, they still have the futuristic thinking. They cannot cross that give up, throw away, impossible, need time. Probably next generation will do that. Will do. So, but not now. But still, they compares with the other country, probably the same thing in Asian country, I don't know. But that is very important.
Well, we know that the next 50-year project is to get him to stop telling jokes. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me first in thanking these wonderful filmmakers for bringing this story to us. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we owe a tremendous round of applause for somebody who has devoted his life to noble causes, somebody who came here to Los Angeles because he believes still in being that bridge, in forging these ties, in helping the two sides better understand themselves. And while we thank Sid Rittenberg, also thank Yu Lin, who has really been his backbone for 50+ years.